All right, hello. Welcome back to another episode of Star Wars Mark of Balance. My name is Mark, and today we're going to be talking about the Acolyte Episode 3, Destiny. Now, there's been a lot of controversy surrounding this episode online leading up to its release. A lot of the reviewers that had received the first 4 episodes have been talking about how great this episode is, or how canon-breaking this episode is. And so there was a lot of expectations. There was a lot of people talking online about, oh, what's going to happen? And at the end of the day, did this break Star Wars canon? No, I don't think so. I think there are some implications in here that I don't like that might go against some established Star Wars canon that I'll definitely get into as I dive into the episode. But I think the biggest sin that this episode commits is that, once again, it's poorly paced. There's some awkward dialogue. There's no subtlety in the storytelling, and overall, it just simply isn't the best that Star Wars could be giving us. I like the concept of this episode. I think the Coven is really cool. I like the design of the planet and the ceremony that they conduct for May and Osha. I love the expansion of Star Wars lore and canon. Like, I'm always for that, but it has to be presented in a compelling way. And aside from Mother Anasea, who I think was the best part of this episode, I absolutely loved the performance from the actor portraying her and the subtleties that there was in her performance specifically. I think everything else about this episode was just okay. And I'll admit, I feel like I was a bit easy on the first 2 episodes of The Acolyte. I think I let a lot of plot conveniences and maybe some of those awkward dialogue moments slip by because I was trying to give the show a chance. But this week, we just saw those amplified with this origin story of May and Osha. And so diving right into the episode, from the first scene, the subtlety in the storytelling just simply isn't there. It isn't strong storytelling when you have to forcibly beat the audience over the head with exactly what you mean when you write things. You should be able to allow the audience to infer things. They should be able to be an active participant in the storytelling. But within the first 5 minutes of this episode, there's no subtlety. They just jump in and say, May bad, Osha good. Remember that. May bad, Osha good. And it's hard to make May this empathetic character when she's so unlikable from the onset here. She starts and picks fights with Osha consistently. She says she's going to kill Osha at the end of this episode simply because Osha is abandoning her, which, again, I think could be interesting, but the lead up to it wasn't done well. There isn't really any chemistry between Osha and May, and we're forced and we're told by the script that we're supposed to feel this really great sisterly bond between them because they have this little lullaby that they say to each other, but it really doesn't come across very convincingly. So by the end of this episode, when we have this emotional moment where May falls to her apparent death and Osha sees her fall, there's no emotional catharsis that Osha just lost her sister because the episode's just moving so fast. The time from when May sets the fire to the end of the episode is like 3 minutes, when I feel like this should have been a very large portion of the episode where Osha is confused about what's going on. May is causing havoc. The Jedi find Osha and she sees her family die. She sees at least the dead bodies of her family and sit in those moments. But it's just such in a rush to just get to the next portion that you miss these emotional beats that would build the characters of Osha and May. I think Master Soul is really great at the end of the episode, but that's because Lee Jong-jae is bringing his all to this role. Before I get into some of the canon-breaking claims that some people are making and some of my issues with the canon stuff that they touch on in this episode, I do want to talk about Osha's interest in becoming a Jedi because, again, it feels heavy-handed. It doesn't feel like it was established with anything. Again, this is coming back to the pacing issues. Halfway through this episode, she just has this desire to become a Jedi. And again, that could be rooted in the fact that she wants to leave the Coven, that she isn't happy here, that she doesn't want to be forced to live a life that she doesn't want. Again, that all is very Star Wars. But her fascination with the Jedi should have been established within the first couple minutes. Maybe we see her drawing the Jedi Council symbol that we see in her notebook under the tree. Maybe we see her talking to May about these mythical warriors and peacekeepers called the Jedi, their lightsabers, stuff that makes her feel like a kid that is looking up at the stars and hearing all these amazing stories about these people and wanting to emulate them or want to be a part of their order. But we don't see that. The Jedi show up and Osha instinctually just says she wants to be a Jedi. She wants to be a Jedi. That's what's in my heart. I feel like with Anakin and even Luke, we had those initial feelings of Anakin was interested in the Jedi because he had heard these stories about them. And he was so interested in their lightsaber and all this other stuff. Luke, again, was interested in the Jedi because his father was one. Osha, there's no real foundation on why she would want to be a Jedi outside of wanting to leave the planet. And I just feel like there was a stronger opportunity for them to build that foundation for her. And again, she does leave the Jedi Order by her own choice, which we learn in the first 2 episodes, and maybe that is part of her realizing that maybe I didn't want to be a Jedi. Maybe I was just looking for a way out of my situation, which might be fair. We might see that in the future. But we also see in those first 2 episodes that she's very devoted to the Jedi Code and very much in reverence of the Jedi that she once was around a lot. So I don't think that's what it is, but maybe that's what it ends up being. So now we'll get into the potentially problematic portion of the episode, and that's with the mother and the coven that we are introduced to in this episode. And again, in concept, I really like this. I think it's really interesting to explore these dark, unexplored corners of the galaxy, make the galaxy feel larger. After 45 years of storytelling, Star Wars should continue to expand like this and not narrow. So I like that overall. I really enjoy the mother character. As I said in the beginning, I think she is the best part of this episode. You can tell that there's a darkness to her, but you can also tell that her care for her children is there. It is true. It is pure. And in these moments where she's talking to May and Osha, in these moments where she's confronting the Jedi and using her dark power against them, you can just see this kind of back and forth tug of, is this someone we should trust? Is this a caring individual? Is it good or bad? And I think that's the point. We're supposed to be exploring that gray middle area. And I think the actress who portrays her does an excellent job of doing that through the subtext of her performance and her emotions that she brings in some of these scenes. I think it's really, really great. I especially love the scene where Osha says, I want to be a Jedi. That's what's in my heart. And the mother is accepting of that. She's like, okay, you've made your choice. I love you. I want the best for you. I don't think you'll see me again, but if that's the destiny and the thread you want to pull on, pull it. And then she hugs her and she starts to cry. And we see that before she hugs her, she says, I'll bring it up to the coven and I'll let your wishes be known to them when we make our decision. And in this moment, again, you feel that caring nature of her, but I also feel like there was a part of her that knew that the coven and her would potentially kill Osha or get rid of Osha instead of giving her over to the Jedi and almost spare her that life. And because she didn't fulfill her duty as this twin dyad that they're trying to build in the coven, that she would be of no use to them and it would be hard, but the mother would do it for the betterment of the coven and maybe her pursuit of power. Again, it's a lot of interesting questions that are all rooted in the mother character, who I think was really strong and interesting overall. Now we'll get to the canon-breaking portion of this episode. Again, I don't think this episode is canon-breaking, but I think the 2 big issues that people are talking about are the implication that Mother Adesanya placed 2 twins inside the womb of her wife, and there was no father, and she essentially used the thread or whatever their power is to create life and to create 2 twins. And the second is the implication that the Jedi are policing Force users, and they basically staked out this coven for, it seems like, weeks to stop them from training May and Osha. And I'll dive into this one a little bit more later, but I do want to start with the mother and the, let's say, immaculate conception of May and Osha. I think this is an issue that Disney Star Wars has had since it's gotten the property of Star Wars, and it's their interpretation of George Lucas's work. I feel like the interpretation of some of the things that happened in the prequels is a bit too literal, and now it's affecting Star Wars canon in a way that I don't think George ever intended. And this kind of falls back to the whole idea that the writing in some of these Star Wars shows and the movies that Disney has done just doesn't understand subtlety, and it just takes things literally. So the two examples I'm talking about here are, one, when Shmi says to Qui-Gon that there was no father for Anakin, that it was kind of this immaculate conception. And the second one was when Palpatine promised Anakin that the dark side would be able to save Padme's life, and that there was this power that the dark side could be used to save Padme, an unnatural ability. In both cases, I don't think these were meant to be taken literally. George Lucas has even confirmed that Anakin's birth and his origin of life aren't important. That's not the point of his story. It's truly left up to the audience. What's important was he was the chosen one by his own accord. He made those choices and redeemed himself in the end with the help of Luke, and he brought balance to the Force. Whether Shmi actually had a Force baby out of nowhere, or if she was knocked up in a cantina on Tatooine and she doesn't remember it, all of that is irrelevant. And I don't think that should open the door for this mother to be able to literally manipulate the Force or the thread or whatever power she has to create life. I just think that, again, goes against the philosophies of Star Wars, of life and death being natural parts of the world, not being able to manipulate those things. We've seen that, again, Disney did not take that to heart, because the second example I brought up is Palpatine luring Anakin to the dark side with the story of saving Padme, with the power that Darth Plagueis was trying to achieve of cheating death. I think Palpatine used his master's story and used this promise of potentially being able to bring Padme back to life and this power as a way to just lure and manipulate Anakin into coming into his apprenticeship. I don't actually think Palpatine thought it would be possible. But if he could spin the story to make it seem possible, and the only way to get Anakin to join his side was to tap into his deepest desires, and that was his relationship with Padme and the people close to him, then he's going to do that. He's going to use what he has in his arsenal to bring Anakin to his side. Disney took that and said, yup, we can do that. We can bring people back to life. And that's why we see the monologue used again in Rise of Skywalker, where Palpatine says, the dark side is a path to many abilities some would consider to be unnatural. So again, I just think this is a reoccurring problem of Disney not truly understanding George's vision and his themes and what he laid out in his films. So in an effort to expand the lore and add more to Star Wars, you're actually taking away from Star Wars retroactively by going against its core themes. And again, we don't know how this plays out. We don't know what the Acolyte will lead to in the end of this season. Maybe it'll all make sense, and maybe the mother lied here and she didn't really conceive these children out of nowhere. But right now, I don't have a lot of reason to trust Disney's understanding of Star Wars because, again, like I just said with the Palpatine example, they've made this mistake before with misinterpreting George's work. Moving on to the other issue that people are having with this is the Jedi being portrayed as this police force that is stopping this coven from training the Padawans. Again, this one isn't huge for me. I don't think it's consistent with the High Republic Jedi that we see in the books, and I also think it's more draconian than what the prequel Jedi do, which is interesting because the prequel Jedi are supposed to be the bottom of the hill of the Jedi fall. So I would expect the prequel Jedi to be an even more draconian version of the Jedi, not the High Republic Jedi we see here with Master Endara enforcing this on behalf of the Republic. By the end of the series, we might find out more about the Coven and how they were taking children and performing these dark rituals on them and killing them or forcing them to do their bidding. Like, all of these things could be possibilities that the Jedi have been aware of, and now they're finally going to step in and do something about it. That's all possible, but I still think the introduction here of Endara coming in and being like, by the order of the Republic, you can't be training these kids. That's not allowed. We're going to take them. That, again, just doesn't feel aligned with the path of the Jedi that we're seeing from the High Republic to the prequels. To fix this, I would have gone for a much more subtle route with Master Undara and all these Jedi feeling uneasy about going there and confronting them and trying to stop them from training these children in the way that they want to. I feel like they should have been like, should we do this? You know, the Republic says one thing, but, you know, we're supposed to be the Jedi. We're supposed to be separate. I feel like that could have been an interesting angle to take, because then at least we would understand the steps on how we got to the prequels, taking incremental steps to get there. But here I feel like we're just already at the prequels. I feel like, again, the Jedi have already fallen at this point, and we're seeing them already fallen, not the progression of them falling, if that makes sense. I think the last thing I want to touch on with this episode is the mystery of, you know, did May's fire kill everyone? And I think the very obvious answer is no. I think it's very obvious that May started a fire, and while her fire had started, the Jedi came to collect the children. The Coven tried to stop them. The Jedi couldn't de-escalate the situation. Something went south, and it caused an explosion within the compound that killed the Coven, their mother, and it was easy to just blame May at the time because she did start the fire. No Billy Joel. And the Jedi have simply been running with this lie that they told Osha, that they didn't do anything wrong, that May started the fire and that killed everyone. But obviously the Jedi must have messed up, because all of the Jedi that we're tracking in this show are spread out. They're all deeply hurt by the thing that they did at the Coven camp, and we'll see where that goes. We even see Master Soul cry at the end of this episode, consoling Osha, which I think is another hint of him saying, we messed up so bad, I'm a Jedi Master, and I'm crying holding this child that we potentially just ruined the life of and probably caused the death of her twin sister. I think that was a big hint that he was showing that much emotion for a Jedi Master. But I think that concludes all my thoughts on this episode. I wasn't a big fan. I think all of the issues that were in the first two episodes were still present here, with some clunky dialogue, some breakneck pace that doesn't let us sit in some of these moments and get to know some of these characters. And I think that hurts May as a character, and being able to empathize with her and her struggle, because she's been so unlikable the entire time. At least with Jaime Lannister, you kind of like him because of his arrogance and the stories of him being the best swordsman in all of Westeros. And then when his flip happens, you're like, okay, now I can actually like him. In this case, and it happened with Reva and Obi-Wan, it was just they made these characters so unlikable that when they do present this twist or this change of heart, it's almost too late. The damage is already done. You're just like, I don't really care anymore. And I'm afraid May might be on that path. I think the canon-breaking things, as with all of the early review type headlines, was overblown. I don't think this exactly helps the canon. I think the implications of the mother creating life is a problem, and I think the Jedi aren't consistent through the High Republic to the prequels here. I think those are our issues here, but again, it was overblown. My favorite part of the episode, and probably the only part of the episode that I really, really liked, was Mother Anasanya. She was great. The actress that portrayed her did such a beautiful job of adding subtext and little pieces of the character through her performance that wasn't in the script. I thought all of that was fantastic. It makes her feel like she is both good and evil. She has this dark side to her that we don't know about, but we outwardly see the very caring nature that she has for her two daughters. All of that was really great. Unfortunately, she dies by the end of this episode, but hopefully we see more of her later on in the season through flashbacks or something else. But I hope that's not the end of her character. I say that, of course, cautiously. I don't want her brought back to life through some weird way. That's not what I mean by I want to see more of the character. Do it in the natural way, please. And yeah, again, Lee Jung-jae is great as Master Soul. He does a great job here of, again, showing that comforting side, but also there is a dark side to what he did that we'll learn more about. So I think those two characters being dynamic is very interesting. Osha being all good and May being all bad is not interesting. Saul and Anasanya are really interesting. I also really liked the ceremony and the imagery of the ceremony. That was really cool, and it felt alien, it felt new, it felt fresh. In the end, the Acolyte should be better. Is this series going to draw in non-Star Wars fans? I don't think so. I don't think it's strong enough as its own series to bring people in. It's not at the level of Andor where anyone can jump in and enjoy it. Even though it's in a new era with all new characters, I still feel like it's not strong enough as a TV show for anyone to come in and watch it. Think about all the huge releases in June with The Bear, House of the Dragon, The Boys Season 4. The only thing that The Acolyte has going for it is that it's family friendly. All the other shows are explicit, so kids couldn't watch them. And that's the only thing The Acolyte has going for it other than the other shows. I just don't think these Star Wars TV shows are strong enough, and frankly, they're not as good as they should be. People might say these are good enough, and I just don't think that good enough is good enough for Star Wars. I think Star Wars should feel special. It should still have that magic from the original trilogy and the prequels. And if you like or love the show, that is totally fine. I'm not trying to say you shouldn't. I'm simply coming at it from an objective perspective that shows of this quality, I do not think are going to help Star Wars stay around longer. I don't think they will keep Star Wars in the limelight because, yeah, this is a divisive show because of idiots on the internet being anti-woke and being alt-right. Like, I get that. But there's also plenty of Star Wars fans that just simply are saying that we deserve better content than this, and they shouldn't be lumped in with those alt-right freaks. The criticisms that are being levied against this show are valid. So I'm rooting for The Acolyte. I hope it gets better. I hope the second half of the season really ties together the dark side user that we saw, the incident, and where May and Osha go. But as of right now, this show has been disappointing for me, at least, because I was expecting something higher quality. But it's kind of fallen into the typical routine that we've gotten with some of the recent Disney Plus shows like Obi-Wan, The End of Ahsoka, Mandalorian Season 3, Book of Boba Fett. So we'll see. Cautious optimism, as always. But thank you guys, as always, for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode, whether you've been loving the show or hating the show. I hope you can understand where I'm coming from, where my criticisms lie, and why I'm simply just trying to defend the Star Wars that I love and that George Lucas laid out. And I just want the best product for all of us. I want the best Star Wars possible. So if you like this, please leave a rating on whatever streaming platform you're listening to it on. I'd really appreciate it. And then follow me on Instagram at @star_wars_mark of balance. Would love to talk The Acolyte with you. My reels are currently some minefields of talking about The Acolyte. So I would stay out of those. Just DM me directly and we can talk Star Wars, and I would absolutely love that. So thanks again for listening. As always, stay safe, stay healthy, and may the Force be with you. Peace.